Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to convert one of our old programs to object-oriented programming. And so I came here to, we've already done the window one before, but here on our first kind of one is image and callbacks. And this was one of our first programs that we made. So I'm simply going to come down here to this code and click here. I want you guys to do the same thing. I clicked copy, and then I opened up a new file, and I just simply pasted this stuff which was from that website right here. I just simply pasted this into here. Now what I'm doing is I've just made some space at the top, and I've made a new line called class image win, and I just decided on this because that's essentially what this program does. It puts an image in a window, and I'm inheriting from FL window. Okay, so the first thing I do here is I have to create the initializer for my image win class, but I have to actually call now the initializer for the base class. But notice here on line 17 that when I do that, I have this variable called BH, which is actually calculated before. So I should actually do this in my initializer here. Okay, so notice I've just simply copied these two lines from 17 and 18 up here. Also notice that pick has self in front of it, right? Because I want that to be a part of the class. I want that to persist. But notice I did not put self in front of AR, the aspect ratio, or the box height, because these are interim calculations. I actually don't need those to be stored in the class. I just need them to be stored temporarily until I create or I call the base class. So, you know, usually I say the first thing you should do in the init function is call the base class init. I didn't do that here because I'm going to do it now. So I could do this a couple of ways. One way I could do it is I could call super dot init, and then I would simply type in the width and the height, right? Or the other way in which I would do it is I would go fl window dot init. But if I do it this way, please remember I have to use self in this case, and then I would also pass width and height as well. However, there is something that I'm missing, and that is that notice here I'm setting the width to be 300 and the height to be box height. So therefore I'm going to fix this. Okay, so there's something wrong with this, and I just noticed it. And the problem is that notice here in the initializer, I'm asking for a width and a height. The problem is that I'm actually calculating the height in this, so that's wrong. So therefore, I'm going to take out the height. So now my initializer is simply going to ask for a width. And guess what? And let me just change this to that, because I have W's here and I don't want it to look funny, because now I'm going to have to change this 300 to width. So essentially now when I create this, I'm going to create it like this. I'm going to go app equals image window, and then I'm going to say 300. And notice, so this is different from before, because when I made it before, I specified here, right? By the way, the other thing which I should do is, should I specify the label, which is cat image? I would say so. And in fact, let's also pass the image here, or let's pass this thing as well. So image win. So let's actually pass a few things. This is the nice thing about changing how we want it. Okay, so I'm going to say cat image here, and then I'm also going to pass in the file name. So I'll say cat, and it doesn't have to be in this order. Perhaps I should change it to the other order, because maybe let's make the label the last thing. Or no, let's keep it that way. It doesn't matter, either way it's fine. So cat.png I think is the name of the file. Okay, so now we have to come up here and we have to change this. So we go comma here, and we'll say, well, after the width, what do we need? It's going to be the label, and then after the label we have to have the picture or the image. Let's call it img. So now we've got a couple of more things in here. So now, which is kind of nice here, is I can just replace this with img. Okay, and also when I call the window here, I'm gonna specify the width being the width here. The height, I've calculated it to be BH, and also now the label, I'm gonna make it label. Okay, so we can't do both here, so I'm getting rid of this super line. So we'll stick with that one for now. Okay, so now at this point, I'm gonna go self. So I'm basically on line 25. I'm gonna go self.begin. Now, why self? Because if you think, what is this class? It's a window. So I'm going window.begin, same as I'm doing here. So now I'm doing self.begin, and then I'm going to create a box here. So I'll go self.box equals FL box. I'll just, copy paste that stuff. Okay, so I've basically copied everything using self. Notice I did not use self for BH because that was just an interim calculation. But I am going to have the class store the picture and the box, so I put self in front of those. So I've basically just copied what was down here on lines like 28 to 33. Now I'm going to put show, app.show not inside the class, and then I'm going to put fl.run. Okay. Okay, so now let's delete everything else that's below here. Okay, so I had to make sure that I had that cat PNG in there, and so that's the program. And if I run this now, it works just like it did before, and now it's object oriented. Okay, so this is a good example of how to learn object-oriented style, and also when to use self and when not. Okay, so the next one I'm going to do is the slot machine. So let's take the slot machine here, and let's go and copy the code, and you can see that I've already pasted it into here, and made some space at the top. And so let's go ahead and convert this guy into an object-oriented style. Okay, so I made the initializer for I inherited from FL window, and I called it slots. And I could probably change it to slot machine, but I don't want to make the variable too long. Then the first thing I did inside the initializer is I called the base class initializer. And also I made the default argument of none for the label. So in fact, here, as you can see, when I'm creating it, I'm not specifying the label. But that's fine. I don't have to now because I have a default argument of none. So now, okay, so I simply copied this line and put it up here, but I want these file names. Question is, do I need these file names to be stored? The answer is no, I do not, because I'm actually going to be, oh, no, wait a minute. I do. And the reason why I do is because, let's see here for a minute. Okay, so this is a really, really good situation to determine if I actually need to use self or not. So let's take a look inside this callback. And if you'll notice in the callback, am I using f names, the file names? And you can see that I'm not actually using f names in here. So, in other words, I don't need these file names to persist in the class. In other words, if I get rid of self, that means when this function finishes, when def init finishes, in other words, once this function is run, this list of strings will disappear. If I want it to persist through all the callbacks and all the functions, then I have to put self in it. But in this case, I don't need to put self. I could. Would it be harmful if I put self? No, it wouldn't. But I'm trying to teach you to understand when you need to and when you don't need to. Okay, so if you'll follow me here, I've decided that f names doesn't have to be self, but if you'll notice down here, are the image list, and I need that because I need the image list here inside the callback, so I have to save these things, or else I'm not going to be able to put the images on the buttons. Now, instead of using a for loop, I thought, hey, you know what? This is just an append in a for loop. I'm just going to use a list comprehension. So if you remember how to do list comprehensions, if you cannot, then go back to my CS1 course and look up list comprehensions. But essentially, here I am, I'm doing it. And when I'm copying it, instead of hard coding the size as I've done here on line 30 with the 200 and the 300, the 200 is actually coming from the fact that I'm taking this 650, taking away 50 and dividing it by 3. So I know that my width is W, so that's 650, minus 50, which I've defined as the pull button width, PBW, and I take that away and then I divide by 3. Now, why am I floor divisioning it? Because I want my answer to be an integer and not a floating point. And so therefore, I'm setting the image width and the height. The height is hard-coded as the same height as the window. Okay? And now, to finish off the list comprehension, and so there it is. I've done those 3 lines, 1, 2, 3, in up here in one line. Okay? And now the next thing. Okay, so now I have come down here and taken all this code and pasted it up here, because this only has to happen once. So that's why I'm putting it in init. It only has to happen at the beginning. So in this case though, I need the buttons to be live with the class, so they have to survive. I'm not going to put win here, but I'm going to go self because I'm actually inheriting from FL window. And again here I'm going to make a pack that's going to survive. And now here, this is kind of wrong. I don't want win.w here. I would go self.w and I would go self.h. Okay, that's good. Pack.begin would be self.begin. And now I'll go into for x in range 3, yeah, self b.append, and these are all self as well. That looks good. That looks good. Now I'm going to make the return button And you know what, since we've already put the 50 as the pull button width here as 50 up there, might as well fix this. This doesn't have to be self because it's just a temporary variable in this function alone. And I want to set the tooltip. So anything associated with a widget that I'm creating here, I need to call self on, and we're going to have to make that function. So now here's the thing about this pull function. This function is going to belong in the class, so I'm going to have to put self in front of it as well. One of the common complaints of Python programmers is that they type self a lot. So I understand why. And so now this is not a window here either, it's self. And we look good. Okay. Okay, so the next step is let's delete everything that we're already finished with. So let's take this stuff here. This is all done. We've converted all this so far. So let's get rid of this. But we'll leave the scheme, and we're gonna change this to let's say our app, and we'll say it's a slot machine. And what's it going to accept? Well, it's going to accept the width and the height, and the label we don't have to worry about, although we can put it in. So let's do that. So width is going to be 650 and the height is going to be 300, and we'll call it slot machine. Okay, so then we've got slot machine there, app.show and FLRun. Okay, so the last thing left to do here is we have to convert this function into a function within the class. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so the first line is the shown. We don't need to make shown with self, because every time we call this callback function, oh, by the way, notice it starts with self because it's inside the class. Notice the indentation. But shown doesn't actually need to be a class method, so it doesn't need self because it's going to get wiped out, and every time we call this function, it's going to start from scratch. So not necessary to make it self in front. So let's copy there. Okay, so what's left to do? I've finished the function pull CB. Okay, so like I said, I didn't need shown to be self because it's just going to last in this function. And also the random number, is not going to be, doesn't need to have self. It doesn't need to persist outside of this function. But I is outside of this function. So the image list, I need to put self in front of that. The buttons exist outside of this function, so I need to put self in front of that. Okay, so do the images. But not these indices. Okay, so not I. That's just in this function and then it's gone. So you can see where I've got self. Now for here, this used to be win.redraw down here. You can see I've changed that to self. And then this, nothing here needs to be changed either. So I'm finished. Now all I need to do is I need to get rid of this stuff because we don't need that anymore. And so that's my entire program. Okay, so from the beginning here, I've got my slot machine class. I've created it. All this inside init happens when I create the slot machine, and the pull CB function, which is the callback for the pull button, is in the class as well. And so down here, I just set the scheme, and I set the create an instance of a slot machine here, and I show the slot machine and I run it. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, so I just had to fix one thing. I had to go and grab those images again, and I actually put them in a subdirectory called pics, and so I use this f string here, and that's it. So now when I run it, you can see that it works just like it did before, except now my whole program is object oriented, hopefully I could win. I'm not sure if I will or not. I might give up. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this solution. And let's see if I can still win. I'm still pulling. There you go. Oh, it said it. Yay! So that's it. So there's my code. And so we did two functions. We did two programs today. We changed them to object-oriented programming. And I'll have the code for you on the website. See you later. Bye.